After the glass test, something in air changed between them. The furious hate that had once been only danger and domination now carried an extra layer, protectiveness, something thick and territorial. He carried her to a private room and set her on the white couch as if she were fragile glass, though his hands were the hands of a man who had broken others without a blink. He stayed near, not leaving her side. When the house job brought hot compresses and ointments, he waved them away with a single word, not needed. He insisted on doing it himself, being sufficient and careful as he cleaned the wounds along her feet. The touch was clinical at first, then inexplicably softer. He tied the bandages with deliberate tenderness and watched every flinch as if cataloguing her. Mine felt exposed in ways that had nothing to do with the test. His proximity pressed on her like a warm weight. She told herself to keep the act, to remain an impenetrable, apparently disabled woman, and yet the steadiness of his breath, the quiet of his presence, began to erode that hard shell. She wanted to say anything but the truth. Instead, she managed a hollow laugh. Maybe I'm just stupid. He snorted, the sound rough and oddly formed. From the doorway came the usual chorus, Jake's man who never failed to punch at the tension with stupid jokes and kinder observation. Then, always the loud one, drifted in carrying a tray of tea and ridiculous green. JK flashed them a glance that could have stopped a bluff, but instead he only said flatly, "Shut up." There was, though, a softness in it now that hadn't been there before. The man laughed and left the tray, scattering the room with noisy familiarity. The sound, the teasing, the careless camaraderie seeped into wine spoons like warmth. For a moment she forgot the test, forgot the gunshots and the cold of the corridor. She forgot to play blind. Mine almost scowled reflexively, but found herself answering instead. Books. I like books. Even Jimin had to stop himself from laughing. JK, however, watched her like a man measuring a price. He scowled in that way that made his jaw look curved. The line between command and protection blurred. No one left. They clustered like a old and trusted family. One found the ridiculousness of it. The guard turned tea servers, the man treading stupid bets about whether she was actually blind, oddly humanizing. It felt unreal, danger, and childish jokes under the same chandelier. That night changed something in JK. For weeks, he had tested her, threatened her, broken her down. But the glass, the blood, the calm way she stood with a gun to her head, there was no faking that. She really was blind, and now that he believed it, his obsession only grew deeper. No more tests, no more games. Instead, he watched her like a man starving, as if every little thing she did fed some endless hunger inside him. He spoiled her. Jewelry boxes appeared on her vanity, though she could never see them. Dresses in silk and velvet filled her wardrobe, tailored for her frame. He ordered the chef to make her favorite dishes every day, memorizing the way her lips curved in the faintest smile when she tasted something she liked. One evening, she sat at the dining table, carefully spooning soup, when one of JK's men made a joke under his breath. Funny, isn't it? A blind queen in a mafia palace. The words barely left his lips before JK's hand slammed on the table, rattling the silverware. The man froze. JK stood, gun in hand, pressing it under his subordinate's chin. His voice was calm but deadly. Silence fell heavy over the room. Wine sat frozen, soup spoon halfway to her mouth, trembling. JK slowly turned back to her, his face just softening in an instant as he crouched beside her chair. His fingers brushed her hand, guiding the spoon back to the bowl. Her lips parted, stunned by the duality of him, dead to the world, but soft for her. Later that night, he returned to her room. She sat by the window, head tilted slightly, listening to the night breeze. He He watched her quietly before finally speaking. She stiffened. I don't care about beauty. His smirk was faint, but his voice was rough, unshakable. Before she could respond, his hand slid to her arms, pulling her up from the chair. She gasped as his lips crashed onto hers, again, hungry, consuming, desperate. But this time, it was different. There was no dust behind the kiss, no suspicion, no trap, just his raw, undeniable need. And when his mouth trailed down her neck, his teeth grazing her skin, she shivered violently, clutching his shoulders. Her breath hitched as his lips dragged down the curve of her neck, lightly at the sensitive spot near her collarbone. She clutched his shirt, trembling, torn between fear and heat running through her veins. He growled softly, pressing her back against the cold wall. His hand framed her waist possessively, tongue sticking into her skin through the thin fabric of her shirt. Jungkook. He kissed her again, harder this time, less bruising, his tongue slipping past hers in a demanding claim. She gasped, and he swallowed every sound like a man's dog. His hand slid up, brushing the hem of her shirt. Her breath caught. For a moment, he paused, giving her a chance to push him away. But when she didn't, when she only gripped his shoulders tighter, his lips curved into a dangerous smile. His mouth hovered over hers, his voice a vow, and a threat all at once. Her chest rose and fell rapidly. She swallowed hard. That was all he needed. He lifted her effortlessly, her legs instinctively wrapping around his waist as he carried her to the bed. His deepened, each one horror, rougher, desperate to leave his mark, his hand tangled in her damp hair, tugging just enough to draw a soft gasp from her lips. Her rasp pulled him back just enough to look at her flushed face, her swollen lip, his thumb pressed over her lower lip, eyes blazing. Her hands trailed shakily over his chest, tracing the lines of muscle she couldn't see. Her fingers memorized him by touch, and the intimacy of it nearly broke him. He caught her wrist, bending them above her head as he leaned down, lips coasting over her ear. And then was on hers again, deep and possessive, as if he was sealing that promise into her very soul. Her lips were swollen from his kiss, her chest rising and falling in short, uneven breaths. JK finally pulled back, pressing his forehead against hers. His grip on her wrist loosened, but his voice was still raw and heavy with desire. He whispered, brushing her cheek with the back of his hand. She stayed quiet, her trembling fingers reaching up to touch his face. He leaned into her touch, instantly, kissing her palm gently, swollen like the roughness he had shown just moments ago. The grand chandelier cast a golden glow over the dining hall. Every seat at the long mahogany table was filled with the family's elders, business partners, and close friends. The air smelled of roasted meats, spiced wine, and tension, thick, suffocating tension. Wine shifted in her seat, her fingers clutching the edge of her chair. She fell out of place. Every glance toward her drew a subtle mix of curiosity and judgment. The entire mansion's elite had gathered, and she, blind, new to this world, felt painfully exposed. A gentle squeeze on her hand broke her spiraling thoughts. JK. Her chest warmed at his words. Despite the nerves, she felt a tiny ember of courage flicker inside her. She nodded slightly, letting him guide her to her seat. Dinner progressed with polite conversation, laughter that sometimes felt forced, and clinking silverware. But the air shifted when JK's father cleared his thought, drawing everyone's attention. Before we continue, he announced, I have an important matter to declare. JUNGKOOK's marriage will be arranged with my business partner's daughter, Leah. Leah, seated elegantly with her family, smiled politely. cheeks sting with pink. My stomach sank, her heart clenched. The voice seemed to tilt, every sound muffled by her sudden panic. Jake slammed his fist on the table, the silver were rattling violently. His voice thundered through the hall, trying every keys. A voice from across the table sneered, sharp and cool. "We're not saying you should let wine go. Keep her. Entertain yourself. Have a little talk. But the marriage must be legal." Jake's hand slammed harder. His mother's voice rose sharply, trying to calm him, or perhaps to scold him. "Jungkook, you're defying us for the sake of a blind girl?" The room fell silent. He leaned back in his chair, smirking coldly. His eyes snapped toward her. One's hands had gone rigid, head slightly bowed. Jacob's lips curled, sharp and dangerous. Her chest tightened, but she obeyed. She could feel the raw protection radiating from him, and it touched her in a way words never could. His father's tone was cold, authoritative, slashing through the tension. "Don't forget, Jungkook, the position you hold, the empire you sit upon, it is because of me. You will obey my orders." Chiki's eyes narrowed, the shadows of the room making his stare even darker. Silence fell over the hall, thick and trembling. Some were shocked, some angry, others afraid. Their smile faltered. Wine's hand instinctively found Jake's again, squeezed tightly, trusting him completely. He bent slightly, brushing her hair behind her ear. His voice softened, almost a whisper just for her. Even as whispers, disbelief, frustration, and jealousy rippled through the room, Jake's firm hand guided her out. His arm was a shield, his presence a fortress, and in that moment, one felt it clearly. In his world, she was untouchable. No one argued further, no one dared. Jake's gaze never left hers as they walked down the grand hallway. Her heart pounded, caught between awe and desire. The intensity, the darkness, and the love, it all wrapped around her like a suffocating yet thrilling embrace. They returned home. His grip was firm, but gentle, his thumb brushing circles over her knuckles. He led her into a warm, sunlit atrium at the back of the mansion. The glass ceiling was full of hanging lights, like guinea stars. A huge sofa was piled with velvet cushion, a tray of fruit, pastries, and tea was already waiting on the low table, as if he had planned this hours before. One hesitated at the edge of the rug, unsure. "This is all too much. We don't have to do this, Jungkook." He stopped in front of her, his hands resting lightly on her shoulders. He guided her to the sofa, sitting down beside her, their knees touching. She felt the soft pushes under her palms, the smell of warm pastries filling the air. He gently brought a strawberry to her lips, and she laughed quietly, biting it. Across the atrium, his younger sister peeked around the corner with a friend. "Oppa's gone soft," she whispered, giggling. "He's feeding her strawberries like drama hero." Jake's sharp eyes caught them instantly. "Out," he said coolly, without raising his voice. They squealed and ran off, but Wine couldn't help smiling. "You scared them," she murmured. He turned back to her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. She blushed and looked away, but he tilted her chin back up with a finger. His expression softened completely. He kissed her forehead, lingering there for a moment, then sat back and said quietly, her eyes widened at the flood of offers. I don't need anything, she whispered. Just don't leave me. His chest tightened at her words. Without another thought, he wrapped his arms around her, pulling her onto his lap, his hands sliding to the back of her head. She rested her head against his chest, hearing the steady beat of his heart. For the first time in a long time, she felt completely safe. The night after the explosive dinner, JK never left Wine's side, his anger still simmering. But every time he looked at her, the fury turned into something softer, something only she could draw out of him. He spoiled her endlessly, holding her hand, feeding her himself, even tucking her into his chest when they lay down. And for once, Wine believed him. Next morning, the mansion was calm, sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Wine sat at the breakfast table, JK beside her, spoon in hand, was feeding her gently, his other arm resting lazily across her chair. His gaze was fixed on her, as though no one else in the world existed. That's when Lee arrived. Her heel clicked against the marble floor as she entered, her face bright with a practiced smile. Good morning, JUNGKOOK, she said sweetly, walking closer. I thought I'd drop by. He didn't even spare her a glance. He simply lifted another spoonful to her wine. Open, he whispered softly, and Wine obeyed, earning a faint smile from him. Leah's jaw tightened. She tried again, moving closer, brushing her hair behind her ears. You seem busy, but maybe we could talk after breakfast? It's been a while since we... The very next second, JK pulled Wine onto his lap, ignoring Leah entirely, his arms circling her waist possessively as he continued feeding her. Wine flushed, embarrassed, but JK looked utterly unbothered, almost smudged. Leah's chest burned with jealousy. She tried to force a laugh, as though he's ignoring her to instinct, but her voice cracked. You really seem taken with her. Her words went unheard. JK's entire focus was on Wine. When a drop of soup dribbled onto the corner of her lips, he leaned closer, without hesitation, and slowly licked it away. Wine gasped, cheeks flaming red. Leah froze in disbelief, her hand clenching at her side. The sight of JK so openly intimate with Wine in front of her was unbearable. With a sharp breath, she spun on her heel and stormed out. JK smirked as he watched her leave, satisfied. Wine nudged him, her face still hot. You're evil. His smirk deepened, and before she could protest, he crushed his lips against hers, hungrily. His tongue explored her, devouring every sound she made, until she was dizzy in his arms. Her hands gripped his shirt desperately, but before things could go further, JK's phone buzzed loudly against the table. He ignored it at first, deepening the kiss, but Wine tapped his chest breathlessly. JUNGKOOK, your phone. He ground in frustration, reluctantly pulling away, his eyes dark and annoyed. He muttered before gently setting her back down. With one last kiss to her forehead, he stood and grabbed the phone, answering the call with clipped tone. Wine jiggled softly at his frustration and picked up a spoon to eat on her own. That's when Leah walked back in. She claimed she had forgotten her phone, but her sharp eyes locked onto Wine sitting alone. Rage and envy twisted inside her. She couldn't stand the way JK spoiled her, worshipped her, as if she were the queen and Leah nothing. Her gaze fell on the steaming cup of the coffee on the table. Slowly, silently, she picked it up, her lips curled into a cruel smile. She is blind. She won't even see it coming, she thought. Without hesitation, Leah flung the scalding coffee toward Wine's face. But Wine moved. Instinctively, she tilted her head aside, the hot liquid splattering harmlessly on the floor. Leah froze, her heart stopped. What? How? She whispered, eyes wide. But you're blind. How could you dodge that? Before Wine could even respond, a cold voice cut through the room. Leah nearly jumped. She spun to him, clutching the cup tightly. I forgot my phone. Came to get it. She lied quickly. His sharp eyes narrowed, scanning her face, her trembling hands, the spilled coffee. He didn't press pause yet. Leah grabbed her phone, but before leaving, she glanced one last time at Ryan. This time, her gaze wasn't just full of envy. It held something darker, suspicion. She tossed it. But how? Could it be she's not really blind? With that seed of doubt landed firmly in her heart, Leah left. JK walked toward Ryan, crouching beside her, concern flickering across his face. She shook her head quickly. No, I'm fine. But JK wasn't convinced. He brushed his cheek gently, eyes softening. His voice was quiet, but it held the weight of a promise, and Wine shivered, not out of fear, but because she realized how far JK would go for her.